Today we're going to be looking at Matthew 24. It's a very exciting and dramatic passage that just escalates in commotion. Now hopefully I'll be shedding light on the preterist interpretation of this text. So without further delay, let's begin. Matthew 24 opens with the disciples showing Jesus the temple. Jesus tells them, "Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." So the disciples then approach Jesus privately on the Mount of Olives and they say, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Now if we just look to Matthew 16:28, we understand why they would want to know about the sign of his coming. Because he's told people, "Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." The words of the Lord. And again in Matthew 10:23, "When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly, I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes." So Jesus answers their question about his coming, the end of the age, the destruction of the temple. "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumours of wars. See that you are not burdened, not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. They will deliver you up to tribulation, and kill you. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many." Now we have this recorded in the first century, this deception. In Acts 20:29-30, Paul writes, "For I know this, that after my departure savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourselves men will rise up, speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after themselves." And if you look at Paul's writings in 1st and 2nd Timothy, you can see the imminency of this deception. Paul writes that evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Think of all the heresies and all the lies and false prophets that they had to contend with in the first century. Indeed, Jesus was talking to them. He says, "Lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end shall be saved." A message which Jesus gave to the churches. Endure to the end and you will be saved. Speaking to those first century churches. "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." It's important that we take heed of this verse. The gospel preached to the whole world. People think to themselves, well, that's never happened. Colossians 1:5-6. "Because of the hope which is laid up for you in heaven, of which you heard before in the word of truth of the gospel, which has come to you, as it has also in all the world, and is bringing forth fruit, as it is also coming among you since the day you heard and knew the grace of God and truth." In Colossians 1:23, "If indeed you continue in faith, grounded and steadfast, and are not moved away from the hope of the gospel which you heard, which was preached to every creature under heaven, of which I, Paul, became a minister." And again in Romans 10:15-8, "And how shall they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the gospel of peace, who bring glad tidings of good things. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed the report? So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, indeed, for their sound has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. Paul tells us in his own writings, the word is preached to all the world, to every creature under heaven. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Notice the geography. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. The abomination of desolation that Daniel spoke of in the second temple, which they would see. If this was a monumental, catastrophic, universal thing that was going to destroy the planet, if all the nuclear arms were going to be launched and explode around the planet, if that's what you're anticipating, what good does those in Judea fleeing to the mountains do? Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. Now, is it against the Sabbath to flee for your life? Answer that question honestly. No. It is not against the Sabbath to flee for your life. What could that possibly mean? Well, back then, it would be difficult to move around in the Sabbath, wouldn't it? It would be difficult because the gates would be closed in the city. Therefore, this is not, this isn't to be heard. This doesn't apply to people 2,000 years in the future. For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been seen since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor shall ever be. Now, we're talking about the Old Covenant Israel coming to an end. There had never been anything like this. If you read the history books, you're talking about babies with their skulls getting mashed up. You're talking about almost the eradication of a people. You're talking about genocide here. Now, people would like to think, oh, but the Holocaust, think about the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a terrible thing, but you got to remember, during that war, there were more Russians killed than Jews. Okay? There were more Europeans killed than the Jewish community. Yes, the Jewish people have faced persecution. We all have. This is just history. But what Jesus is talking about here is specific to a generation, as we will see. Okay. So pray that your flight not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as there not been yet. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Now let's look at 1 Corinthians 7:29. But this I say, brethren, the time has been shortened, so that from now on those who have wives should be as though they had none. Now if you look at the context, Paul's talking about the tribulation of the present time. He's saying because things are heating up so terribly just now, those who have wives should live as if they have none. We need to labour hard. The time's been shortened. Okay? Our salvation is nearer than we first believed. Alright. Okay. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will rise up and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the very elect. Now, it's important that we pay heed to this message, okay? Back in that first century, before 70 AD, there would be signs, false signs, that would deceive even the elect. Now today, it doesn't happen. Today, it does not happen. At least nowhere near on that scale. Today it's suggestion, today it's your imagination run wild, or just trickery and hysteria. Back then, there would be signs performed that were unmistakably supernatural, that were not of God, but were of darkness. That's what Jesus is saying here. Do not be deceived. Jesus isn't saying, oh, they're going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. No, he's talking about some crazy things going on. Jesus actually has to tell them, see, I have told you beforehand. See, he's telling them beforehand. Therefore if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, do not go out, or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning comes from east and flashes to the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. Now, I used to think that meant that the sky would light up brilliantly bright, would always shielding our eyes from the light of it. No, it's saying, for as lightning comes from and flashes in the sky, it just means it will be apparent, okay? For wherever the carcass is, the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. People hear that language and they think to themselves, oh wow, that's going to be spectacular. I'm going to be looking at that and physically transpiring and think, wow, this is crazy. People who say that are not familiar with the Old Testament, particularly Isaiah 13:10, Ezekiel 32:7 and 8, Joel 2:30-31. The prophet Isaiah speaks in the same manner while discussing the destruction of Babylon, or prophesying, I should say. He says, the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. The prophet Ezekiel describes in similar terms the destruction coming to Egypt. When I shall put thee out, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. The prophet Daniel uses similar language when speaking of the slaughter of the Jews by the little horn, probably meaning Antiochus Epiphanes. And it waxed great even unto the host of heaven, and cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. So when it talks about these stars being tramped, we realise it's not talking about literal stars, balls of gas in the heavens now, in space. It's talking about people, okay? And lastly, God, by Joel, foretelling of the very same destruction in Jerusalem, says, I will show wonders in heaven and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be darkened, turned into darkness, and the moon into blood. So great commotions and revolutions upon the earth are often represented by commotions and changes in heaven. It's metaphor, it's hyperbole, it's this rich Jewish expression, okay? Then the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. Now it's important to remind ourselves at this point that Matthew 16:28 and Matthew 10:23 reveal that there will be people of that generation who will be around when the Son of Man comes in his kingdom, okay? But we should also remind ourselves of John 17:24. Father, I desire that they also whom you gave me may be with me where I am, that they may behold my glory which you have given me, for you loved me before the foundation of the world. Okay? Then Jesus said to them, John 7:33-34, I shall be with you a little while longer, and then I go to him who sent me. You will seek me and not find me, and where I am you cannot come. But then he says in John 14:3, speaking to his disciples now, And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may also be. Judas, not Iscariot, said to him in John 14:22, Lord, how is it that you will manifest yourself to us and not to the world? Interesting question. John 18:36, Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. So we see that his kingdom is not from the world. Now you can't say, oh, but it will be from the world in the future. No, its origins are not of this world. Okay, and he's coming back to take people to be with him where he is. Right? Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. So he's telling his disciples here, when you see these things, you will know that it is near, at the doors. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. He says, of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Notice what he says there. He doesn't say, I have no idea when this will happen. He says, because that completely contradicts what he's just said and what he's about to say. He says, of the day and hour, I don't know. Okay, so he's saying specifically, I'm not sure. Generally, it happens in this generation. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days... Now, I just want to stop there. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. How often must I refer back to Jesus telling people that the Son of Man will come in that generation? He says, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. How often must I refer to these verses? But as in the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until that day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, and one will be taken, the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taking, the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. I come as a thief in the night, and I'm coming soon. That's all we see in the Bible, particularly in Revelations. I'm at the doors, I'm coming soon, you better be ready. Thief in the night. Not a physically spectacular event that we perceive with the 5 senses, but with the heart and mind tuned into God and the Spirit and in truth. Verse 44 then. In 1 Corinthians 5:4 we read, But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that this day should surprise you as a thief. Okay, so he's telling his audience not to be surprised by this day. You're watching for it, it's coming. Okay? And in Revelation 16:15, Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. So this was an impending, imminent event. Okay? Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household, to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Now, if you read 1 Thessalonians 4:17, then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Okay? I want you to focus on we who are alive and remain. Paul wrote that letter to the church at Thessalonica. He did not write that letter to you. Do not be tempted to inject yourself into mail that was never addressed to you. Okay? That was written to the church at Thessalonica, and Paul was not deceiving them. He said to them, we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. Okay? So blessed is the servant, okay, whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, okay, if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to drink and eat with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and at an hour where he is unaware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, without this dragging on too much further, I just think it's clear that Jesus was speaking to his first century audience. He said he was. He mentions specific things that were going to happen and did happen in the first century. It's all tied together. You can't break it apart and say, well, that happened in the first century, but all the other stuff happened 2,000 years later. People concede. The commentaries I've read from futurists concede that Jesus expected this all to happen within that generation. Okay? And what they say is, Jesus couldn't have known any better. Like when you look off into the distance and you see two mountain tops and you think they're together, but really one's a few miles away from the other. That's what was going on here. His perception was off. So basically, to get round about this, they say Jesus didn't know what he was talking about. They say Jesus got it wrong, but they don't go that far. They don't say Jesus got it wrong. No, they say Jesus was just a man. Jesus was just a man. So when he said all these things must take place, and when he spoke about these things happening, after one another in the same time, he got it wrong, but not really. It was just human error more than anything else. Or as C.S. Lewis put it, it's the most embarrassing verse in all of Scripture when Jesus predicts that will happen in the first century to his generation. I don't think so. I think he got it right. All the best.